Awesome, man. Hey, great to be with you. I'm so glad that you're here. Matt said it, but man, guests, thank you so much for choosing to worship with us this morning. We hope that over the course of time, if you get to know us, we get to know you a little bit, maybe this can feel a little bit like home for you. So we want to be an extended family, so to speak, not only for a spiritual family, but also just, man, it takes a village to live and to raise kids and to do all the things. So we're that village, and we would love to be that for you. Couple of things. I've got an announcement, and then I've got a funny story. So I'm going to give you the announcement first, and then we're going to track with the funny story, and that'll kick us off, okay? So over the last, about a year, we've been praying and thinking through, okay, what are we going to do about the parking situation? What are we going to do about the fact that, well, this room is full and it's July? And if you know anything about our church in July, you usually are on vacation, and for whatever reason, you've decided to show up. And so I'm really thankful for that, by the way. Thanks for showing up. But also, it's kind of presented us a bit of a problem, and that is we continue to grow. And that's something to celebrate. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, God continues to add to our number, and man, we're so thankful. We're going to continue to do what we do, and I'm thankful that He would do that. But nevertheless, it presents a problem. And so here's our solution. We've been praying and thinking about, okay, Lord, what would you have us do? And so beginning August 10th, we are going to be moving to 2 services. So we're going to have a service at 8:30, then we'll have a service at 11. We'll have Bible study in between, and it's going to be great. There's a lot of reasons for that, obviously growth, and we want to celebrate that. So man, thank God for that. So we can take a moment, let's celebrate the fact that God does that. That's cool. Again, and it's going to alleviate a lot. I mean, man, what we don't want to do is be a church that turns people away. You know, we don't want to do that, and we don't have any more seats. We don't have any more parking spots, so we got to do something, and this is that solution. But it's also more than just a logistical kind of step, right? It's also a missional step. This provides us an opportunity to expand our reach into the community. There are people in our community who do not yet know Jesus. There are people in our community who are looking for a church, and the last thing we want to be is a church that says, hey, we don't have a place for you. We want to be a place where everybody can call home, right? And so this is a great opportunity for us to do that. It's a missional step, but it's also a discipleship step. So here's another thing too, right? So if you've been with us for a while, you ought to know that our discipleship pathway, we know that you're following Jesus when you're connected with Him, you're growing in Him, you're serving Him, and you're leading people to Him, right? That's what we want you to do. We want you to grow or connect. We want you to grow. We want you to serve, and we want you to multiply. This is an opportunity for you to do that. So if you have yet to commit to serving in an area, if you've yet to commit to growing in a new way, well, this is going to present opportunities for you to do that. We need more kids, or we need more people in kids ministry. We need more people in worship ministry. We need more people in hospitality. We need you. And guess what? You're the church. You're the church, and we need you guys to show up and to be a part of that. We need more leaders and a whole host. Josh mentioned it in the video announcement. So we need more people, okay? And it's going to be great as we seek to serve our community in that way. Also, as we continue to grow, it's going to be really important. I mean, 3.5 years ago, I came to you and I said, hey, look, we're all moving to one because I want us together and I want us unified. Well, the Lord has blessed that. I feel like our church is as unified as it's ever been. I feel like we're all walking in the same direction. We're all on the same page, and maybe it's not a perfect page, but hey, we're walking it out together, and we're going to continue to do that. And at the same time, we want to be a place, again, that's hospitable for the folks that are in our community, those who are here, but also those who are not here yet. We're praying for those folks, okay? So that's my announcement. You ready for the funny story? Okay, all right. So, senior in college, and you'll laugh at this. It's about that moment where Jordan tells me I'm supposed to propose to her, And so it's senior year, ring by spring, y'all know that phrase, and I'm thinking it, and I'm like, okay, it's about that time, and so I go out and I buy a ring, and I'm not a wow guy. I'm really much more of a meaningful guy. Thank God all this happened before Pinterest and Instagram hit the social media world, because I would have been lost as a goose. And so I want to do something really meaningful for her. And the way I chose to do that was to create a custom puzzle. was a custom puzzle. That's how I proposed to my wife. Why? Because she loves puzzles. And so I went out and I had this custom puzzle put together, and it told the story of our life together, which was at that point about 5.5, 6 years, right? So we had some pictures, right? So it had the kind of the storyboard of our life, and then in the middle of the puzzle was the question, will you marry me, right? I know, romantic. I know. Come on, guys. Yeah. Right, so we, here's this opportunity to, get together. I go get us dinner. We're sitting on a blanket. It's beautiful sunset. West Texas sunsets, can't beat them. And we did find one beautiful spot in all of Lubbock. And we're sitting there, sun is setting, and we begin to put together this puzzle. And I'm not much of a puzzler. She's a puzzler. I sit and observe and talk to her while she does all of the hard work. And here's where it all goes south. It all goes south where she starts putting not the outer edge parts together, but the center. And I'm like, you can't, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God. So I start panicking a bit, right? And like any rational man would do, I'm sitting there, it's warm summer evening. I start taking centerpieces and I start kind of tucking them in the leg of my shorts. Because I'm like, she can't put that together first. Like, it's got to be the dramatic effect of the whole thing, and then all it coming together, and then boom, right there, and then punchline, will you marry me? And then here we go. That's in my mind. Well, it's all falling apart, so I'm panicking a little bit. Well, then we get, a little bit down the way. She starts putting the outer rim together, and I start realizing, oh my gosh, there are pieces missing. So, I'm like, shoot. So I stand up, shake a leg, out come a few of the puzzle. Well, needless to say, she puts all the puzzle pieces together. There it was, will you marry me? She said yes, and here we are, right? Yeah, I know, I succeeded. Beautiful moment, obviously a great point in our life, but here's the point of that whole story. That puzzle told our story of our relationship together. It's full of pictures, memories, meaning, all of the things. But without those final puzzle pieces, the puzzle itself lost its greater meaning. And I think sometimes life can be like that, right? Sometimes you can have all of the talent. You can have all the success. You can have all of the beauty. You can have all of the spirituality. You can have all of the stuff. And yet, without integrity, something is seriously missing in your life. Integrity, as we're going to talk here in a minute, is the piece that makes all of the puzzle, gives meaning and purpose to the entire piece of the puzzle, the big puzzle. And integrity, it's not flashy, it's certainly not always seen, but it is what holds everything else in place. Your life, if we were to look at the puzzle of your life, what makes it truly matter, not only for today, but also for the long game, is your character. It's your character. Now, at the end of your life, a wise person told me this one time, and I thought at the time he was telling me it, I thought he was crazy. But as I've grown and matured, I've realized more and more that, man, he was right. People are not going to remember you for what you do in this life, but for who you are. And the reason why that's true is because who you are influences what you do or what you don't do. And I'm going to talk about this at length in a minute, but our world is fascinated and we're obsessed with all of the things that we do and what we don't do. But the greater truth is not what we do or what we don't do, but it's who we are that matters most. That's what really matters the most, okay? So, hey, let's talk about integrity. Let's talk about the importance of integrity. I've got a couple of different definitions. They'll be up on your screen here for you. A couple of different definitions. Merriam-Webster, they define integrity like this. I think it's helpful. Integrity is a firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values, okay? I think this is helpful. I don't think it's wrong, but I think it falls short, okay? I think it falls short of what the Bible would define as integrity. Now, cards on the table here. The Bible doesn't necessarily define integrity, but as I've studied the book of Proverbs this week and tried to get my own idea of what integrity is, here's my biblical definition of integrity. I think this is true. It is the consistent alignment of your whole life with God and His Word. Okay, so every word is chosen very carefully. The consistent alignment, not of God's world to you, but your world to God, okay? Consistent alignment of your whole life with God and His Word. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22 speaks to this. Solomon writes these words. He says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are His delight. In like fashion, Solomon's always comparing and contrasting, right? He compares a life that's repugnant to the Lord to a life that is pleasing to the Lord. He says lying lips are repulsive, whereas one who acts faithfully is His delight. That means that he takes pleasure in that life. Now, this verse brings us into something really, really important. I said it a minute ago, but you're going to hear it over and over and over again, that integrity is less about what you do and more about who you are. And again, in our world, we put far too much value on what we do and what we don't do, and not nearly enough value on who we are as people, which is why in many ways we have the leadership crisis in the country that we have, because we champion what somebody can do for us, but we forget about who they are as people. But who we are as people influence what we do or we don't do, right? So it's integrity, again, is not about what we do and what we don't do. It's about who we are as people. Now, in this verse, Solomon highlights, he says lying lips, right? And that's not Solomon just picking on lying. What he's saying is he's actually referring to one who is a liar. Someone who has lying lips is not just a liar, or doesn't just lie, they are a liar. They make that a habitual part of their life. He uses the phrase act faithfully to describe one who consistently lives according to his or her values, which is a little bit different. Now, as we discuss the importance of integrity, I want you to remember this, that there are no perfect people. Right? So when we talk about integrity, and here in a minute we're going to talk and unpack the idea of morality and all that stuff, there are no perfect people on this earth. You will not find them. You will not meet them. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Now that we've established that, we can be friends, right? There's no perfect people. That doesn't exist. But there are consistent people. You see the difference? There's no perfect people, but there is such a thing as consistent people, which is why I think integrity is the consistent, not perfect, alignment of your whole life with God and His Word. Integrity is consistent in that we are the same person in public as we are in private, right? It involves the whole of one's life, not just parts, right? Not just the Sunday version of you, not just the Instagram version of you or the Twitter version of you, the Facebook version of you, right? It's all of life being aligned to God and His Word. Again, oftentimes in our culture, right, we want to align God to our values, but here, if we're talking about true, deep, meaningful integrity, we're talking about aligning our lives with God. And again, not just part, but all, a holistic view of our lives, okay? Now, I got a graphic for you because it really tells the story, a little bit of the the difference between a secular view of integrity and a biblical view of integrity, and I think that's important for us to take a look at. So here you go. So secular integrity versus biblical integrity, right? Morality of secular integrity it's relative, right? Culture or personal ethics, whereas a biblical integrity is absolute. It's built on, the foundation of that is God and His Word. Secular integrity, the goal is personal or social good, whereas a biblical integrity is faithful living that honors God and blesses the community. It blesses society. Right? The core concern of secular integrity is being consistent with one's values, right? Whereas biblical integrity is being consistent with God's values. The key question that secular integrity asks is, am I consistent with my own values? Whereas a biblical view would say, am I aligned with God's truth in every area of my life? Now, what we can appreciate about both of these views is that it refers to a consistent integrity, right, that is consistent with one's values. However, here's where I think we can get this messed up. David Brooks, he's an op-ed writer for the New York Times, okay? I've read this guy for probably 15 years now, and I've watched this guy go from being a secular person to a Christian person. Pretty cool. Watching and you can see it in his writing. And here's what he says. He says, what is missing in American culture today is that generations of people have been raised to believe that the moral code for their life is relative. That means it changes. He refers back to this other op-ed writer for the New York Times who's long gone. He wrote this in 1955. His name's Walter Lippmann, by the way. He forecasted the problem of this. Here's what he says. If right and wrong is based on what we feel at any given moment, we have left the realm of civilization. Whoa, that's a pretty bold statement. You know, if you were to keep reading in Brooks's article that he refers to, he says that we live in a moral universe of one, where morality is based on my feelings and what I value at any particular time. That's pretty interesting. And I think that's probably true of our culture. Nevertheless, here's where all of this is breaking down, and I think this is what Christianity has to offer a secular view. If morality can change, it's impossible to live a consistent life. So as you saw that up there, right? If my values continue to shift based on what I feel at any given point, it's impossible to be consistent at anything valuable. You can be really consistent and be a person of chaos, which, by the way, is what you're seeing right now in the world. Just turn on the news, is just what seems to be kind of chaotic, because morality is like this target that keeps moving and nobody can quite seem to nail it down. Nobody can find the bullseye of it, right? Which is part of our huge problem that we have, right? And so, Solomon, he speaking to this, in chapter 11, verse 3, he says, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them, right? A life guided by emotions rather than truth is only going to lead to destruction. That's where it leads, because it's not grounded by anything. There's no foundation that holds it all together. Whereas those who are consistently living a life aligned, their whole life aligned with God and His Word, right? There's a foundational truth by which you and I live. Now we have some foundation of which we can live by. And I think what we need right now, more than ever, is we need a lighthouse of people, a people who say, hey, I'm going to be a lighthouse. By the way, did you know that a lighthouse was created so ships right there out at sea, at night, they could see a safe place to land? I think in many ways, that's what the church needs to become. And I don't mean universal church. I don't mean the building. I mean you. I mean me. I mean, we as the church need to be a lighthouse for this constant turnover, this ever-changing wave of values. We need to be a lighthouse to say, hey, here's a safe place to land. Here's a safe place to call home. Here's a safe place to root my life. And so, I was thinking about it this week. I was like, hey, if our church, if you want to make a difference in your life, then be a person of integrity. Be a person of character. Don't sacrifice that for something of lesser value. If our church wants to make a difference in our community, then we as the church collectively in our workplaces, at our schools, on the ball field, while we're driving, which I could tell you a funny story, but I don't have time for it. It's in my notes, but I don't have time for it. But we need to be a people of integrity, even on the road, in our homes. You and I need to be a lighthouse to say, hey, here's a safe place for you to land. Here's a safe place to ground your life. And it's not on the shifting waves of what we feel at a given time, but it's grounded in something that is lasting, okay? So that's the importance, right? We need people of integrity. We need people of character. And character is not so much what you do, but who you are as a person, right? So we've established that. Now I want to talk to you about the reward of a life of integrity, because, hey, let's face it, It's helpful to know the reward, okay? So here's what flows from a life aligned to God and his word. Number one is security. When you live a life of integrity, you gain a life of security. And I don't know about you, but man, I like the appeal to that. In this insecure world that we live in, there's a level of security that comes from a life of integrity. In chapter 10, verse 9, Solomon writes that whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. Right? You're going to be found out. In other words, that's what Solomon says. Hey, if you build your life on you and what you can gain and what you can get, and at all costs you're willing to do that, then guess what? You at some point will be found out. By the way, more people know more than you think they do. Right? Anybody ever heard of the imposter syndrome? Handful of you, imposter syndrome? Okay, simply put, here's the imposter syndrome. It's the fear of being found out. It's the fear that everybody in your world is going to find out who you really are, not the you that you present to people, but the real you that you are, the one that you have to, go to bed with at night, the one that you have to look at the mirror in the morning. That you that nobody knows, the 1%, because you wouldn't dare share, the 1% of you that you're afraid that if somebody found out, they'd go running. You know what I'm talking about? Right? It's this idea that we will be found out. And, the reality is we live in this kind of world where we build our entire life around kind of this truth. So take social media, take Instagram, take Facebook, whatever it may be. In a world of social media, nobody posts their best day. We always post our worst day. We always post our best day. Great meal, great vacation. Here's when everybody's happy, and yet they're a mess at home, right? Like, we post all of the highlight reels of our lives. We filter, we perform, we present the best version of ourselves, hoping that people like that version that we think that they might like. Why do we do that? Because we're scared that somebody's going to find out the real you. But that's what a lack of integrity does. Okay, that's what a lack of integrity does. It teaches us, it makes us hide. It makes us hide. At school, at work, even behind our faith, right? We can even hide behind our faith, our spirituality, where we portray a more self-righteous, godly person than we actually know that we really are. We cut corners, we lie, we work, we achieve, we blame. We do all of these things to cover it up, spending our lives trying to cover up who we really are, hoping that nobody will find out who we are. And King David, right, he did that. In fact, he did it to a pretty drastic way, right? I mean, think about, he takes Bathsheba, that whole thing goes south real quick. And then what does he do? He lies to cover it up. And then when that doesn't work, he murders to cover it up. All so that he could protect his image. But here's the deal, right? God knew, David knew, and it cost him greatly, right? When it came time to build God's temple, what did God do? He rejected David. He said, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to give that responsibility to your son because your hands have shed innocent blood. Whoa. Listen, if you want to be secure in life, be a person of integrity. Be a person of character. Be who you are in private, in public, and be the person in public that you are in private. But recognize that if you want to be a person of integrity, it's going to require a consistent life, whole life, aligned with God and His Word. If you want to make a difference, that's how you make a difference. If you want your life to count, that's how you make your life count. You be the same person in private that you are in public, and the same person you are in public in private. And that goes to social media accounts and everything else, right? Being a person of character is not just about what we do. It's not just about what we say. It's not just about the way that we live. It's about who we are and allowing who we are to influence everything else that we do. If you want to make a difference, if you want to have a secure life, be a person of integrity. For when you do, you won't have to worry about being found out. You won't have to fear that. For integrity brings security because there's nothing left to hide. There's nothing left to hide. By the way, we are all exposed to the Lord. There's nothing that we can hide from him. And yet he has still given his son for us. And if he knows it all, we can be secure in Christ, in him, knowing that he has covered all of our unrighteousness, so that we can live who we are as we are in the world in which God has placed us to live. Okay, here's the second one, rest. Rest. Chapter 28, verse 6, Solomon writes this. He says, "Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in all of his ways." In other words, it is better to be poor, it is better to have nothing and still have your integrity than to have everything and have lost it. Than to have everything and have lost it. You guys remember the movie The Greatest Showman? Anybody seen that movie? It's a great movie. My kids love it for many different reasons. I love it because of the story that it tells, right? It is a really cool story about this guy, P.T. Barnum, who grew up super poor. At one point in his life was homeless. His dad passes away, tragic event, and he's on the street and he has nothing. But what he does have is two things, an imagination and character. Right? Imagination and character. So he uses his imagination and he builds something that the world has never seen. We know it to be the circus. So he creates the circus. And then over the course of time, right, all of his success and achievement, all of that kind of goes to his head. And he begins to cut corners. He begins to lose focus. And then shortly thereafter, you see his life in ruins as the very thing that he built is gone. But not only is the circus gone, but also he loses his family, he loses his fame, he loses everything, right? Kind of the prodigal son moment where he recognizes what he lost, he feels the deep remorse, and so he returns back home, and Barnum runs back home. He knocks on the door of his father-in-law's house knowing that his wife and kids are there, and he finds out that she's not there. She's at the beach where they met, and they spent time together as kids, and they fell in love. Really iconic moment, you know. So he goes to the beach, and there, sunset, right? They're on the beach, the wind's blowing in her hair, beautiful moment. All the things, and he looks at her, and it's this moment of apology, right? And what's crazy is, here's what he says. He says, "I wanted to be more than I was. I just wanted to be more than I was." And then she looks back at him, and she says, "I never wanted anything but the man that I fell in love with." In other words, she didn't want anything other than the poor boy who had nothing, but had everything because he was a man of character. Man, what a moment in the story as everything around him is falling apart and he's realizing that the one thing that he wanted most was his family. And he lost his family, not because he lost his finances or because of anything else, but because he lost who he was. He lost his character. He lost the foundational place of who he was as a person. That's the greatest tragedy of that particular movie. At the end of life, all we will carry with us is our character. Everything else, our beauty, wealth, achievements, possessions, all of those things are going to fade, and we are going to be left with our character. And typically when someone dies, we say, "May they rest in peace." But I will tell you, the best way to rest in peace tonight is to walk in integrity today. Because when you walk in integrity, your soul is not at war with itself. Listen, life is hard enough. Why make it more difficult by losing your character? Number 3, generational blessing. So when we choose a life of integrity, Solomon's going to say that we gain a generational blessing. Our integrity is passed on to our kids, and he says it's a blessing. Chapter 20, verse 7, he writes that the righteous man walks with integrity, blessed are his children after him. I want you to keep this in mind. Who you are in this life matters for those you leave behind. Who you are in this life matters for those you leave behind. Who you are either blesses or curses those that you leave behind. Specifically, Solomon says your children. And sometimes our sin can blind us to this truth, and we think that, well, what we do in private doesn't really affect anyone. But your children, your family, your friends, your coworkers, those in your immediate influence all see far more than what we think that they do. They're observing your life. If you're in some form of leadership over some person, which we all are, we all have somebody who's looking to us for answers. We all have someone who's looking to us for life, whether that's a kiddo, a grandkiddo, whether that's a spouse. We all are influencing somebody. We're all leaders to one degree or another, and they're all watching your life, and they're all seeing far more than you think that they are, in spite of the way that we present ourselves. And, the reality is that oftentimes our children are the greatest reflection of our integrity. There's plenty of people who present themselves as incredibly godly in public, do really, really great things, but what they do in their private life tells a different story. And typically, the evidence of that is lived out in their children, right? There's either a blessing or there's a curse. And in many ways, I think our children, like I said a minute ago, are our greatest reflection of our private character. We wonder why kids of people grow up to be monsters. Well, they didn't learn it on their own. And it's like, wow, man, but their parents were great, godly, amazing people in public. But maybe they weren't in private. And I think, sadly, oftentimes our kiddos, again, become the greatest reflection of our private character. And if we're not really, really careful, we can curse them rather than bless them by not all the things that we do, but the person that we are. Did you show up for them? Were you there? Or were you so busy making a buck that you missed them? Were you so busy trying to present yourself on social media that your kids are sitting at the dinner table and you're still on your phone? That's a very real thing. I walk into a restaurant and people my age, well, I say it's people my age, but it's everybody. You walk into a restaurant and it's amazing to me. You look around and everybody's on their phone. Everybody. And then we wonder why we're so messed up. Because we don't even know how to talk to one another, much less live lives of character and integrity. It's not about how all the things we do or we don't do. It's about who we are as people. Who are you? And who are you becoming? Our integrity is not measured by what we do in public, but by the legacy that we leave behind in the lives who were closest to us, the people, the loved ones that were closest to us. Now, here's what I want to do, right? Because I think oftentimes, I know I'm guilty of this, and I'm projecting me onto you, so forgive me for that. But oftentimes, I can hear a sermon, and I'll listen to it, and then I'll go out the door, and I'm like, I'm so hungry, I got to get to lunch, or I got to do things. I'm a busybody. I've always got to do stuff. And I can forget on Monday what I learned on Sunday. And so one of the things that I want us to do is I want to work this out this morning so that maybe we leave here a little bit different than we walked in, okay? So I want us, knowing that integrity is more about who we are than what we do, I want us to do a little heart work, okay? You good with that? Here's what we're going to do. Psalm chapter 24, verse 3. Here's what David writes. This is really good. He says, "Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. He," hear this, "will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob." What I want to do is I want to raise up a generation of people who are seeking the face of God, who are seeking the God of Jacob, and who are asking the Lord regularly, "Lord, give me clean hands and a pure heart. Help me to be a person of character. Help me to be a person of integrity, knowing that the little things matter in life," right? Help me to lead well. Help me to do it with clean hands and a pure heart. And so that's what I want us to ask of the Lord today is, "Lord, would you just give me clean hands and a pure heart?" And as we do that, a couple of things I want you to think about. There's a graphic right here on the screen. There's no such thing as perfect people, but consistent people, right? What I'm not saying is that everybody in this room needs to be perfect, because I've given up on you. Sorry. I've given up on myself there in spite of my best efforts. There's no such thing as perfect people, but we can be consistent people, right? Integrity is not about what we do, but it's about who we are, right? Constantly, we need to be reminded of that as we go to the Lord and say, Lord, you got to change me, right? It's not always about behavior modification of don't do this, don't do that. It's about, man, I need this thing that lives in my chest. I need it changed. I need my soul shifted, right? And then number 3, because of Jesus, we have this hope, right? This is beautiful, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us, right? Not at our best, not at the you that you present others, but at your worst, that 1% you wouldn't tell anybody because you're scared to death that they would run away. God ran to you in that 1%. So much so he even gave his son Jesus for you in that 1%, right? Not when you had it all together, but when you were a mess. That's the beautiful truth of the gospel, right? God doesn't expect you to clean yourself up to him. He says, no, you stay as you are. I'm going to clean you up, but I am not going to let you stay as you are. I'm going to transform you into the image of my son, Jesus. That's how the gospel works, right? He takes you as you are, and he transforms you as we learn to follow him. We learn to love what he loves. We learn to think the way he thinks. We learn to hate the things that he hates, all of those things, right? His character is developed in us, right? And so in him, we're secure, we can rest, and we can leave a generational legacy behind us. Man, that's what we need to be about, a secure church, right? A church at rest, right? And we're leaving a generational legacy behind us as we influence and bless and love our community really, really, really well, okay? So here's what I want to do. I want us to spend some time, I want us to reflect on those things. God, give us clean hands and a pure heart. So if you would, every head bowed, every eye closed, and let's just work this out with the Lord, okay? I want you asking questions like, Lord, where are areas of my life that need to be in alignment with you? Maybe there's some parts of your life where, man, you're living for yourself in this particular area when you need to be living for the Lord, or maybe there's an inconsistency in your life somewhere where you need to, maybe you need to work that out with him. Maybe you've been a different person in public than you are in private. Maybe you feel too far gone. Maybe you feel too far gone. Hey, listen, I'll tell you, the Bible is riddled with people who are too far gone, and God uses to do incredible things. In fact, most of them we couldn't even hire at our church. And yet God has used them in mighty ways. You are not too far gone. The blood of Jesus is sufficient for you. So maybe you need to just remind yourself of that this morning. And maybe you just don't know, and so you need to ask the Holy Spirit, Spirit, just open up my heart. What do I need? What needs to change in my life this morning? As I take of the table of the Lord, what do I need? What needs to change? What are you trying to change? And maybe I'm not letting you.